probably you can research and then you connect offline. Okay, makes sense? Okay. When you look at this topic, okay, what are the first thoughts which come to your mind? Okay, I understand that you all have a good lunch. I'm sure you have a good lunch. So I will ensure that you don't sleep. First part. Second part, I want this to be an interactive session. I have 70 odd slides, so I will ensure once I leave, I will share this with ma'am, so that all these details are with you, right? But I want to ensure this session is more of collaboration, right? So once you look at this, what is the first thought which come to your mind? Anyone? Okay, anyone want to speak? Marathi, Hindi, English, कुठल्याही language मध्ये बोललं तरी चालेल. It's all good. काही problem नाही आहे. I understand already.
How AI is going to be support for this integration of cybersecurity and cloud?
Very good. Very good thought. What else? Anyone else want to speak? Okay.
Yeah, PCOP server. Yeah, PCOP.
Okay, before we deep dive into this, I want to make few details clear. This presentation, what you're going to see for next 2 hours, is totally based on number of pictures or screenshots or JPG images, whatever you call them, right? And the reason being is, I've been highly influenced by Mr. Rajesh Ramakrishnan sir, ex-MD Prophetic, who has been my coach and mentor in the ISB Hyderabad CPO program, and Nandakishore sir, who is an ex-VP Nestle. And both of these people have left such an influence on me that when you make a presentation, people live with images rather than words. So whatever you speak, they may not remember, but if you create a good picture in front of them, maybe they will remember that picture. So with that kind of an influence, every single slide what you're going to see is a picture. And my job, I believe, is to explain that picture so that you understand the nuances around it. Okay. First part. Second part, all these pictures or the images are created with the help of AI. But I have ensured that there are no privacy breaches, there are no copyright infringement with it. And all these details are mostly coming from my prior knowledge of last decades of whatever conversations I'm currently having with my friends in the industry. So if anywhere if you come across any company references, that's just a coincidence. Okay? So let me start. I have split this session into 6 sections. First would be, we will talk about what is AI-driven systems. Second section will basically talk about key terms in cybersecurity and cloud integration. Third, we will talk about what are the benefits of integrating AI with cybersecurity and cloud. The next will be what are the challenges we foresee with these systems. And then what is the next which is happening right now as we speak. Some of these you might be associated as part of your projects, or you might be reading this through newspapers, and also I've tried to inculcate whatever details I can of what is the latest happening in this space. And last will be the summary of it. Okay? Can we move to the next part? Everybody with me? Okay, first section, introduction to AI-driven system. As I said, the first thought which comes to the mind is, what is AI and what AI can do, for us. But if you go little back, if you look at history of maybe last 200 years, what is that you come across? What is that you see as part of industry? Anyone can correlate what I'm talking about? Okay. So we are basically talking here of how generations generations of industry or how generations around industry is moving. What topic we are trying to learn today is something basically moving from industry 4.0 to industry 5.0. But even before to reach there, we should first understand what has happened, through this evaluation of industries, right? If you have a glance of this, the first three versions of industry are more of corporate empowerment. When I say corporate empowerment, it was more from the standpoint that we are looking at how industry is growing. So industry started with singular production, then it moved into double digit, and then it moved into mass production, right? That is where we moved from industry 1.0 to 3.0. But if you look at the movement from 3.0 to 4.0, here we are talking about upskilling in terms of technology, upskilling in terms of people skills, right? So the earlier part was more from the process standpoint or the industry growth standpoint, but industry 4.0 and 5.0 more focus is on the people as well as the technology aspect. Okay. Quick question. What is the differentiation on the slide you see from 4.0 to 5.0? What is that you see in the slide? Or what is that differentiation you see between 4.0 and 5.0? Anyone?
Robot working as co-workers.
Can you speak a bit louder?
Robot working as co-workers.
Correct, but then how you would interpret that? I mean, what is the significance of it? So what is happening? Okay, you're almost there. If I have to summarize, I would say that the differentiation or the upskilling which is happening between 4.0 and 5.0 is the 5.0 systems are intelligent systems where they can make decision on their own. That's why you are using robots, so that's why you are using, going to use AI systems, right? What it benefits is the speed and the efficiency with which your industry is working earlier is now going to multiply X man, right? 10x, 100x, maybe 500x. Right? Okay, next. This is typical AI system, right? Most of you are computer related people, so you would understand, what this all slide is all about, right? NLP, machine learning, computer vision, neural network, cognitive computing, deep learning, right? But layman person like me, if he wants to understand what exactly or what it signifies, let's go a little bit deep into understanding each one of it, right? So what does NLP test, right? NLP is nothing but something, which helps AI systems to understand human details, right? In terms of reading, in terms of writing, in terms of understanding the details, right? What is machine learning? It is basically helping, to understand the data, right? Mass chunk of data can be analyzed through machine learning, right? Next is computer vision, nothing but eyesight for your AI systems, something it visualizes, analyzes and provides data. Neural network, basically the main structure around which the AI systems are built. Cognitive computing basically focuses on simulating what human thoughts do all about, right? Trying to mimic what humans do. And last but not least is the deep learning, right? Which is again part of multiple other factors or support in AI. What's the details? I don't want to preach anybody anything here, but the reason that I wanted to have this is because all of these details will play a significant understanding part in the next slides. So that is the reason why I included all of this, right? Now with this, let's talk about what AI systems do in modern engineering, right? This slide is a crux. Maybe it will help you to understand how exactly AI systems are being built across the industries. So the sensors collect data from the ground, then that has been processed as part of your AI local processing system. Then that is collected in cloud, which is your data repository. Large chunk of data is being collected. Patterns identified through this, and then it has been given to the certain system which does an understanding and interpretation of data to a greater extent. Right? So the data flows from sensors through the control mechanism, while as intelligence flows from top to bottom. Right? I think these arrows basically explain those details well. Okay. Everybody with me, I mean, these are all basics. I believe most of you already know this. The only reason I included this because I thought there will be large chunk of people who are not coming from non-computer background. So I just felt that I need to include those as a beginning so that we all are on the same page. Now this is the most important slide of this presentation, where it will be referenced till the time we finish the session. Have a look at it. This is basically a convergence of AI, cyber security and cloud, and how the intersection of it is going to help. I believe this is the most important slide of the presentation. So if you combine AI, so AI, what is AI, right? What are the features AI brings in? What are the features cloud alone brings in? And if you combine AI with cloud, what benefits you get is where it is mentioned on the top. On the right hand side, cloud and cyber security, those come together. What all benefits you can gain? And on the left hand side, if AI combined with cyber security, what are the benefits you are going to get? This will highlighted here. And the middle of the slide is basically the convergence where AI, cloud and cyber security combined together, what all it can do. And that is where the industry 5.0 is getting. Everybody with me? Do you want me to explain everything or this is okay. Next section. Key terms in cyber security and cloud integration. So if you go back a slide earlier, so if you combine AI with cloud, AI with cyber security, what is that you're going to get? So this is what you get. Okay. So this is AI-enabled threat detection, basically used in cyber security, where AI is enabling cyber security to do all the analysis. Right. The first part is basically collecting the data. Second part is basically talking about identifying the patterns, verifying whether that pattern is part of the regular behavior or whether this particular pattern is different than the available pattern. That is what is anomaly detection. It will also look at the user and the behavior of the users, so which is nothing but your behavioral analytics, basically telling to the administrator that do they need to take any corrective action. Now, for example, you all are teachers, you identify there is a student in the class who is making a lot of noise, right? What will you do? You will do two things. First, either you will shout at him or you will throw him out of the class, right? Throwing out of the class will be the last thing you want to do when you have tried everything else, right? So behavioral analytics works in a similar way, where user actions are being identified, analyzed, and corrective action is taken. The next part is basically then the triage, which basically gives benefit as well as explains what is happening. And then the last part is basically a security operations center, which explains what sort of action needs to be done, either on the actions of the users or on the actions of the application or on the application level or the platform level details. For example, a certain application is continuously being used or the workload related to that particular application is on a higher side. So in the SOC operations, the action which administrator needs to do is it needs to allocate further computational resources to that particular application so that your application does not go down. So some of those monitoring happens through SOC. Okay? Or if there is a cyber attack, then taking preventative action or monitoring what is happening on your infrastructure and your network is done through SOC. Okay? Everybody with me, any questions on this? Okay. Now, moving on to the next part, which is cloud security architecture. Again, very impressive. The slide shows the comparison between the earlier systems versus the latest systems. You might have heard all of this. This is not new to you, I believe. Zero trust security, where everything is just being scanned. It basically works on the principle of verify everything, list privileges, dynamic controls, and then assume that everything is going wrong so that you take preventative action, right? So that's a zero trust security, right? And if you look at the earlier systems were more from identifying details, verifying those details, and then take corrective action. So it was more of a reactive, while zero trust is more of proactive. Okay? I'm sure all of this is something you would have already heard or seen. Now, if you want to go further deep, what exactly is the philosophy or the details around this? It is explained in this slide, right? So it's a layered approach for zero security, zero trust security. So first layer is basically your identity layer, where you verify, you check what is happening, basically who is logging in, what activities are being done, and then entire network is being scanned continuously. That's your continuous monitoring. So that happens at your network layer, identity layer. The next layer is the network layer, where you go through the secure access. You check the details. You check how your applications and the network is segmented. That's your segmentation. And then once that segmentation is been done, it's end-to-end encryption which happens around there. And then the last layer is your application layer, where various details have been processed, identified, analyzed, and then corrected. Okay? So the philosophy here is you have a list privilege, you have strict controls when data is being captured, data is being processed, data is being monitored, and then the policies are implemented assuming that there is a breach. Okay? So that's a cloud security architecture. Okay, slide very close to my heart. This is something which I do. Data security, privacy, and compliance. Right? So you might have heard that there are a number of regulations which have come up. There are a lot of regulations which are coming up. In fact, which have been observing news. 30th July 2026, which I believe is a couple of weeks ago, RBI has issued the latest guideline around ID, for all the banking sector. If anybody would have read those details, I mean, something which is part of my job, you would understand that there is a significant change which regulators are going, basically RBI is going in terms of how they want banking systems, IT systems of the banks needs to be protected. So that is just one example I want to refer because that's something very recent. Slide basically explains that there are a number of regulations which are applicable as you move, and regulations which are specific to industry, regulations which are specific to how you process data, regulations which are specific to the privacy, right? And then how you manage all of this is something which is represented on this slide. Okay? So you will have controls around user data, you will have controls around data processing, you will have controls around